The sun had not yet fully risen when the social services car stopped in front of the gate of Sunny Creek Ranch. The red dust from the dirt road slowly settled on the white vehicle, which contrasted with the rural landscape of Blue Ridge. In the back seat, a 5-year-old boy watched through the window, his dark eyes absorbing every detail of that unfamiliar place. "We're here, Jake," said Sarah, the social worker, turning around with a forced smile. "Remember what we talked about? Mr. Thompson is a good man, but a little reserved." The boy merely nodded, holding tightly to a small faded blue backpack, all that remained of his previous life. His brown hair was disheveled from the journey, but his posture showed unusual maturity for his age. From the porch of the main house, Walter Thompson observed the scene with a stern expression. At 62 years old, the rancher still had the strong body of a man who had always worked the sea. Land. But his eyes carried the sadness of someone who had lost his life companion 3 years ago. Martha, his trusted housekeeper, nervously adjusted her apron by his side. "Mr. Thompson, you promised to give the boy a chance," she murmured, anticipating her boss's resistance. "I didn't promise anything, Martha. I just said he could stay. A few days until closer family appears," Walter grumbled, but there was something in his tone that showed he wasn't as convinced as he tried to appear. Sarah got out of the car and opened the back door for Jake. The boy exited slowly, his worn sneakers touching the red earth. He raised his face to observe the 2-story house, with its blue-painted wooden windows and the red-tiled roof that seemed to tell stories of past generations. "Good afternoon, Mr. Thompson," Sarah greeted, climbing the porch steps. "This is Jake. As I explained over the phone, he's related to your late wife, Margaret, from her family's side in Denver." Walter lowered his eyes to the boy, who remained a few meters behind, observing everything with almost scientific attention. There was something about that child that bothered him, not out of malice, but from a strange sense of familiarity he couldn't explain. "Come here, boy," Walter called, his voice softer than he intended. Jake approached slowly, stopping in front of the rancher. When their eyes met, something inexplicable happened. For an instant, Walter felt a shiver run down his spine, as if that gaze was already familiar. The boy also seemed to be studying him, as if searching for something familiar in that sun-wrinkled face. "He doesn't talk much," Sarah explained. "The trauma of losing his parents is still fresh, but he's a well-behaved and obedient child." Martha knelt in front of Jake, her maternal face lighting up with a genuine smile. "What a handsome boy. Are you hungry? I just took some cornbread out of the oven." For the first time, Jake's lips curved into a small smile. "My mom used to make cornbread," he said, his voice low but clear. "Oh, that's nice. Then you'll like mine too," Martha replied, extending her hand. "Come with me, I'll show you where you'll sleep." While Sarah finalized the paperwork with Walter in the office, Jake accompanied Martha through the house. The boy observed each room with curiosity, lightly touching the walls as if trying to capture some memory hidden in the wood and whitewash. "This was Miss Margaret's sewing room," Martha explained, opening a door that revealed a small but cozy room with a twin bed and a window that faced the back of the property. "I fixed it up for you to stay here for now." Jake approached the window and looked outside. In the distance, he could see a corral isolated from the others, where a solitary figure moved restlessly. Even from a distance, it was possible to perceive the majesty of the animal confined there. "What's that?" asked Jake, pointing to the corral. Martha sighed and approached the window. "That's Lightning, a very special horse. No one has been able to get near him since Raymond left." "Why did he leave?" "Nobody knows, child. One day he simply disappeared without telling anyone anything. He left the horse and never came back." Jake continued observing the distant animal. There was something in the horse's movement, in the way it seemed restless and lonely, that touched something deep in his small heart. Perhaps it was the shared feeling of abandonment, or perhaps something more mysterious that he still couldn't understand. "He looks sad," murmured Jake. "He is." "Sad," Martha agreed. "Animals feel longing too, you know, and that one feels a lot of longing for Raymond." That night, during the silent dinner served in the ranch's spacious kitchen, Jake observed Walter discreetly. The rancher ate unhurriedly, occasionally raising his eyes to the boy but without initiating conversation. The atmosphere was tense, loaded with unspoken expectations and an uncertain future. "Tomorrow you can see the rest of the ranch," Walter finally said, breaking the silence. "But there are rules. Don't go far from the house without telling someone. Don't touch the equipment, and especially—" He made a significant pause. "Don't go near the back corral. That horse is dangerous." Jake obediently nodded, but his eyes shone with a curiosity that Walter couldn't interpret. There were secrets on that ranch. The boy could feel it, and somehow he knew that his presence there was not just a coincidence. The rooster crowed, for the third time when Jake opened his eyes. Dawn still enveloped the ranch in bluish shadows, and the house remained in absolute silence. The boy had slept poorly, his dreams populated by confusing images of galloping horses and a male voice that lovingly whispered his name. He sat up in the narrow bed and looked out the window. There he was again, Lightning, walking restlessly, from one side of the corral to the other. Even in the dim light, Jake could sense the tension in the animal's movement, as if he too couldn't find peace in sleep. "You can't sleep either," he murmured to himself, observing the imposing silhouette of the horse. Something inexplicable compelled him to get up. He quickly put on the clothes from the day before and barefoot left the room. He knew that feeling. It was the same he felt when his mother was sad, and he knew he needed to hug her even without her asking, a deep need to offer comfort. The ranch house breathed in the slow rhythm of dawn. Jake descended the wooden stairs, stepping on the edges of the steps to avoid creaking. He passed through the kitchen, where the aroma of Martha's cornbread still lingered, and reached the back door. The latch was a bit stuck, but it yielded silently. The morning air was fresh and loaded with the smell of damp earth and grass. Jake breathed deeply and walked barefoot through the dew-moistened grass, following a path that his feet seemed to know instinctively. Lightning sensed his approach before even seeing him. The horse stopped in the center of the corral, his ears rising in attention. Jake approached slowly, his eyes fixed on the animal that now observed him with an almost human intensity. "Hi," whispered Jake, stopping a few meters from the wooden fence. "You're Lightning, aren't you?" The horse took a few steps toward the boy, his head tilted in curiosity. There was no aggression in his posture, just a concentrated attention that completely contrasted with the descriptions Jake had heard the night before. "They said you're mean," continued Jake, his voice still low but without fear. "But I think you're just sad. I'm sad sometimes too." Lightning came closer, stopping only when his muzzle almost touched the boards of the fence where Jake was leaning. The boy extended his hand slowly, letting the horse smell him. To his surprise, Lightning didn't back away. On the contrary, he gently touched his muzzle to the small palm. "You're soft," murmured Jake, amazed, "and warm." The horse remained still, allowing the boy to caress him. There was something in that touch that calmed him, a familiarity that he couldn't explain but that his heart recognized. It was as if a part of himself, long lost, had finally come home. "Did Raymond take good care of you?" asked Jake, continuing to caress the animal's neck. "He must have been very special for you to like him so much." Lightning responded with a low whinny, almost a whisper. Jake smiled, the first genuine smile since arriving at the ranch. "Do. You want me to come visit you again?" he asked. "I promise I'll come every day before the sun rises. That way nobody will worry." As if understanding perfectly, Lightning shook his head and stepped back a few paces, but continued observing the boy with attentive eyes. The sound of footsteps on the house porch made Jake turn quickly. Martha had come out to hang clothes on the line and could see him at any moment. The boy quickly said goodbye to the horse with a wave and ran back to the house, entering through the back door at the exact moment Martha came down to prepare breakfast. "You're up early today, child," she observed, noticing that Jake was already dressed. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, Mum," replied Jake, trying to disguise his excitement. "Can I help you make breakfast?" Martha smiled, touched by the boy's kindness. "Of course you can. Do you know how to scramble eggs?" While helping in the kitchen, Jake couldn't stop thinking about his encounter with Lightning. There was something magical about that connection, something that made him feel less alone in the world. For the first time since his parents' departure, he felt that there was a place where he belonged. Walter came down for breakfast with his characteristic morning mood, few words and much concentration on the work that awaited him. He observed Jake helping Martha and noticed that the boy seemed more animated than the previous night. "Today you can meet the cattle," said Walter, spreading butter on his bread, "and the other horses which are tame. But remember what I said yesterday." "Yes, sir," replied Jake, slowly chewing his bread with cheese. "I won't go near the back corral." Walter nodded, satisfied. He didn't suspect that at that very moment, Lightning was anxiously awaiting the next visit from his new friend. The day passed slowly for Jake. He met the cows, the chickens, the other horses, and helped Martha with small household tasks. But his thoughts always returned to Lightning, to that magical moment of connection he had experienced at dawn. When night came, Jake went to bed early, eager for the dawn. He was certain that their meeting had not been a coincidence. There was something very special waiting for him at that ranch, something he didn't fully understand yet, but that his heart knew would change his life forever. From the back corral, Lightning also waited. For the first time in months, the wild horse had found peace, and that peace was the size of a 5-year-old boy, with eyes full of understanding. A week had passed since Jake's arrival, and the secret routine of morning meetings had already become the most anticipated moment of the day for both. Every dawn, when the world was still asleep, boy and horse would reunite in a silent communication that required no words. This morning, Jake brought a surprise. He had saved an apple from the previous night's dinner, hiding it under his pillow. Lightning awaited him in the center of the corral, as always, but this time Jake noticed something different. The horse seemed calmer, less restless than in the first days. "I brought something for you," whispered Jake, showing the red apple. "My dad always said horses like apples." Lightning approached the fence, his nostrils dilating as he caught the scent of the fruit. Jake extended his hand carefully, and the horse took the apple delicately, chewing with visible pleasure. "You liked it," observed Jake, smiling. "I'll bring another one tomorrow." It was then that he noticed something that made him freeze. On the other side of the corral, half hidden behind a loose board, was a small metal bowl. Jake frowned, curious, and could see that inside the bowl was clean, fresh water. "Wait a minute," he murmured to himself. "If nobody gets close to you, who's putting fresh water in your bowl?" Lightning observed him attentively, as if understanding the boy's confusion. Jake walked around the corral, examining every detail. It was then that he discovered something even more intriguing: small footprints in the dirt near the fence. Boot prints, fresh, that certainly weren't his or Walter's or the other ranch hands. "Someone comes here in secret too," murmured Jake, looking at Lightning. "Someone who takes care of you." The mystery intrigued him all day. During lunch, while Walter and the ranch hands discussed the afternoon's work, Jake paid attention to the conversations. "John, have you noticed that Lightning is calmer lately?" Walter asked the foreman. "It's true, boss. It's been days since he tried to break." "The fence saw whinny in anger," replied John, a robust man with graying hair. "I even thought he might be sick, but he's eating normally." "Strange," murmured Walter. "Since Raymond disappeared, I've never seen that horse so calm." Jake lowered his eyes to his plate, trying to disguise his interest in the conversation. Martha observed him discreetly, noticing his thoughtful expression. "Jake, have you been sleeping well?" she asked. "I have the impression that you wake up very early." The boy swallowed hard. "I sleep fine, Miss Martha. It's just that sometimes I have dreams." "What kind of dreams?" she insisted, maternally concerned. "I dream about horses and about a man who sang softly," replied Jake, surprising himself with his honesty. Walter raised his eyes from his plate, suddenly interested. "A man who sang." He sang a song about mountains and rivers, a very deep and affectionate voice. Martha and Walter exchanged significant looks. It was Martha who broke the silence. "Raymond used to sing that song," she said quietly. "It was a tune he said he learned from his father, from back in Kentucky Hill Country." "How could you know about that, boy?" asked Walter, his voice loaded with suspicion and curiosity. Jake shrank in his chair, realizing he had said too much. I don't know, I just dreamed it. That afternoon, while Jake helped Martha collect eggs in the henhouse, she started a conversation about the ranch's past. You know, Jake, your relative Margaret was a very special woman. She had a gift with animals, just like Raymond had. What? Do you mean a gift? She could calm any wild animal just with her presence, said it was a matter of understanding what they were feeling. Martha paused, observing the boy's reaction. Have you ever had any contact with animals before? My mom had a cat. He didn't like anyone, but with me he was gentle. Interesting, murmured Martha. But she didn't pursue the subject. That night Jake could hardly wait for dawn to arrive. There were many questions spinning in his head, and somehow he felt that Lightning would help him find the answers. When they finally met again, Jake noticed that the horse was even more docile. This time Lightning approached the fence completely, allowing the boy to caress not only his muzzle, but also his forehead and neck. You know who's taking care of you, don't you? Asked Jake in a low voice. You know who puts fresh water in your bowl. Lightning whinnied softly, an almost melodious sound that made Jake's heart race. It was as if the horse was trying to tell him a secret. I'm going to find out, promised Jake, and I'll help you find that person again. It was at that moment that a noise coming from the direction of the house alerted him. Someone had turned on a light in the kitchen. Jake quickly said goodbye to Lightning and ran to the house, reaching his room at the exact moment he heard footsteps in the hallway. He quickly lay down, pretending to sleep, when Martha opened his door slightly to check if he was all right. She stood there for a few seconds, as if she knew something wasn't right, but finally closed the door and returned to her room. Jake remained awake until dawn, planning how he would discover who the mysterious person was, who also secretly cared for Lightning. He was certain that this discovery would be the key to understanding the special connection he felt with that place and with that extraordinary horse. In bed, while listening to the first roosters crowing, Jake smiled for the first time since arriving at the ranch with a true sense of purpose. He had a mission now, and nothing would stop him from unraveling the mystery surrounding Lightning and Sunny Creek Ranch. Curiosity was consuming Jake. For 3 days, he had observed the fresh footprints near Lightning's corral, and his determination to discover the identity of the mysterious visitor only grew. This dawn, he decided to arrive even earlier, hidden, to finally unravel the secret. He left his room when it was still completely dark, walking with redoubled care through the silent house. This time, however, he didn't go directly to the corral. He positioned himself behind the tool shed, from where he had a complete view of Lightning's corral, but remained hidden in the shadows. Time passed slowly. Jake was almost dozing when he heard the soft sound of footsteps on the grass. His heart raced. He would finally discover who that mysterious person was. He stretched his neck to see better and almost shouted in surprise. It was Martha. The ranch's housekeeper walked carefully toward the corral, carrying a bucket of fresh water and what appeared to be a handful of carrots. She wore a robe over her nightgown and house slippers, but moved with the confidence of someone who had made that journey many times. "Good morning, my dear," she whispered to Lightning, who waited for her near the fence, completely calm. "How did you sleep?" Jake watched, fascinated, as Martha changed the water in the bowl and offered the carrots to the horse. There was an intimacy between them that spoke of months, perhaps years of secret care. "I know you miss him," continued Martha, caressing the animal's neck, "but I can't let you go thirsty or hungry, not after everything you two meant to this ranch." Lightning responded with a low, affectionate whinny, clearly recognizing the affection in the woman's voice. It was then that Jake decided to reveal himself. He could no longer watch in silence. "Miss Martha," he called, coming out from behind the shed. The woman almost dropped the bucket, turning quickly. Her expression changed from fright to embarrassment in a matter of seconds. "Jake, what are you doing here? How—" "I visit him every day too," confessed Jake, approaching slowly, "since the first day I arrived here." Martha looked at him with a mixture of surprise and growing understanding. You can get close to him?" "He lets me pet him," replied Jake, demonstrating by approaching the fence. As always, Lightning came to meet him, allowing himself to be caressed. Martha's expression completely transformed. There was something wondrous in her eyes, but also a shadow of recognition that she tried to hide. This is extraordinary," she murmured. "Since Raymond left, I'm the only person he tolerates nearby, and even then, he never let me touch him like he lets you." "Did you know Raymond well?" asked Jake, his childish curiosity taking over. Martha hesitated for a long moment, as if making a difficult decision. Finally, she sighed deeply. "Jake, I need to tell you some things, but first, promise me you won't tell Mr. Thompson that I come here?" "I promise," replied Jake solemnly. "Raymond wasn't just a ranch hand. He was my son." The revelation hit Jake like lightning. He looked at Martha with wide eyes, trying to process the information. "Your son?" "My youngest son. He worked here for 12 years since he was a teenager. He had a special gift with animals, especially with horses." Martha approached, the fence her eyes filling with tears. "He found Lightning when he was just a foal, orphaned, lost in a storm. He brought him here and raised him as if he were his own child." "Then why did he leave?" asked Jake, genuinely confused. Martha closed her eyes, as if the memory was painful. He made a mistake. He believed the wrong people, got involved in business he shouldn't have. When he discovered he had been deceived, and that his presence here could bring problems to the ranch, he left, said it was to protect all of us." "But why didn't you tell Mr. Thompson?" "Because I'm afraid he might send me away too," confessed Martha. "This ranch is my life, Jake, and taking care of Lightning is the only way I have to keep my son alive in my heart." Jake absorbed the story in silence, caressing Lightning, who seemed to sense the emotional tension in the air. Suddenly, a question arose in his mind. "Miss Martha, did you know my mother or my father?" The woman looked at him with renewed attention. "Why do you ask that?" "Because sometimes I dream about things from this ranch, things I shouldn't know, like the song that Raymond used to sing." Martha became very quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was loaded with emotion. "Jake, tell me something. What is your mother's full name?" "Emily Carter," replied Jake without hesitation. Martha's face paled. "Carter, my goodness. What is it?" "Jake, I need to show you something, but not today. Tomorrow after Mr. Thompson leaves for town." She approached and held his small hands. "Promise you'll wait for me?" "I promise," replied Jake, intrigued by the woman's reaction. "And promise that until then you won't tell anyone about this?" "I promise." Martha hugged him quickly, a hug loaded with emotions that Jake couldn't fully understand. When they separated, she was crying. "Go home now, child, and get some sleep. Tomorrow you'll understand many things." Jake obeyed, but his mind was buzzing with questions. As he returned to the house, Lightning watched him leave as if he too knew that great revelations were coming. That morning, when Walter announced he needed to go to town to resolve matters at the bank, Jake could barely hide his anxiety. He would finally have the answers he'd been looking for, and somehow he knew his life would change forever after that conversation with Martha. The dust from Walter's truck had barely disappeared down the road when Martha called Jake. She stood at the kitchen entrance, holding an old wooden box, her hands trembling slightly. "Come here, child," she said, her voice carrying a solemnity that Jake had never heard before. "It's time for you to know the truth." Jake followed her to the living room, where Martha placed the box on the coffee table and sat on the sofa, indicating for him to sit beside her. The box was small, but seemed to carry the weight of many years. "Before I open this," began Martha, "I need you to understand that everything I'm going to tell you is true, however difficult it may seem." "Okay," replied Jake, his eyes fixed on the mysterious box. "Jake, my son Raymond wasn't just a ranch hand. He was married. He had a family." Martha paused, observing the boy's reaction. "He was married to your mother." The words took a few seconds to be processed. Jake looked at her with growing confusion. "My mother was married to Raymond?" "No, child. Raymond was your father." Jake's world stopped. He felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. He looked at Martha, searching for some sign that she was joking, but found only seriousness and tears in the woman's eyes. My father wasn't Raymond, he murmured, his voice small and confused. My father was Stephen Carter from the auto repair shop. No, my dear. Raymond Carter was your real father. Stephen was Raymond's brother, and when your father had to leave, Stephen took his place, raised you as if you were his own son. Martha opened the box carefully. Inside were old photographs, letters, and some small objects. She took a faded photo and showed it to Jake. This is you, at 1 year old, in your father's arms. Jake took the photograph with trembling hands. In the image, a strong, loving man held a smiling baby. Behind them, Sunny Creek Ranch was clearly visible, and in the background a foal that Jake immediately recognized as Lightning. That's why Lightning knows me, murmured Jake, the pieces of the puzzle fitting together in his mind. He remembers me. Exactly, confirmed Martha, taking another photo. You used to come here every week when you were a baby. You played with Lightning, who was just a foal at the time. You two grew up together until you turned 2. But why did my mother never tell me this? Martha sighed deeply. Because she wanted to protect you. When Raymond had to leave, he left a letter saying it was dangerous to maintain contact with. His previous life, he asked Emily to raise you away from the ranch for your safety. What kind of danger? Your father got involved with people who promised to help him expand the ranch's business, but they were dishonest people who wanted to use the property for illegal activities. When Raymond discovered the truth and refused to participate, they threatened our family. Martha caressed Jake's face. He left to protect all of us, including you and your mother. Jake looked again at the photograph. There was something in the smile of the man holding the baby that deeply touched him. Did he like me? Like you? Martha laughed through tears. Child, he loved you more than anything in this world. He would spend hours singing you. To sleep, take you to see the horses, tell you stories. She took a yellowed letter from the box. He wrote this for you for when you grew up. Jake took the letter but couldn't read the written words through the tears that clouded his eyes. Miss Martha, does that mean you're your grandmother? She completed, opening her arms. I'm your grandmother, my dear boy. Jake threw himself into Martha's arms, and they both cried together for long minutes. They were tears of pain for the separation, but also of relief for the reunion and for the truth finally revealed. That's why I felt at home here, murmured Jake against the woman's chest. That's why everything seemed familiar. This has always been your home, replied Martha, caressing his hair, and I always knew that one day you would return. But how? How did you know? Because when you arrived here, I recognized my son's eyes in you, and when I saw how Lightning reacted to your presence, I was certain. She moved back a little to look at Jake's face. Animals don't forget, child. They have memory of the heart. Does Mr. Thompson know? Martha shook her head. He knows that Raymond was my son, but he doesn't know that you are my grandson. I didn't have the courage to tell him. Why? Because I'm afraid he might get angry with me for having kept the secret for so long, and mainly, I'm afraid he might want to send you away. Jake thought for a moment, processing all the information. Miss Martha, Grandma, he corrected, smiling for the first time. Do you think my father is still alive? I believe he is. Raymond was a strong and intelligent man. He must be somewhere waiting for the right moment to return. Then I'll stay here, declared Jake with determination. I'll stay and take care of Lightning until he returns, and I'll help you with the ranch. Martha smiled through her tears. Child, you're just like your father, determined and brave. But what about Mr. Thompson? Will he let me stay when he finds out who I am? We'll find out together, but first, I think someone is dying to see you. Jake looked out the window and saw Lightning in the corral, looking directly at the house, as if he knew that big changes were happening. Can I go talk to him, tell him that now I know the truth? Of course, my grandson, go, but this time you don't need to hide anymore. Jake ran outside, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He finally understood why. He felt so connected to that place, that horse, that life. He wasn't just an orphan lost in the world. He was a boy who had found his way back home. When he reached the corral, Lightning was waiting for him with his head held high, as if he too knew that the secrets were over and that a new phase of their lives had begun. Walter returned from town earlier than expected, finding a scene that left him perplexed. Jake was mounted on Lightning, without saddle or bridle, riding calmly around the corral as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The horse that no one could touch allowed a 5-year-old child to guide him with just whispered words and gentle touches. "Good Lord," murmured Walter, stopping his truck and quickly getting out. "Jake, get down from there immediately." But, to his even greater surprise, Jake showed neither fear nor haste. On the contrary, he guided Lightning to the fence where Walter stood, dismounting with an agility that spoke of practice, not chance. "Good afternoon, Mr. Thompson," Jake greeted, calmly. "You came back early. How did you—" Walter looked alternately at the boy and the horse, which remained docile beside Jake. "That horse doesn't let anyone near him." "He lets me," replied Jake simply. "He always has." "Always? What are you talking about?" It was at that moment that Martha appeared, walking slowly toward them. Her face was pale but determined. In her hands she carried the wooden box with the photographs. "Walter," she said, her voice firm despite her nervousness. "I need to talk to you. It's about the boy." "Martha, what's going on here? How did this boy manage to ride Lightning?" "Because it's not the first time he's ridden this horse," she answered, handing him one of the old photographs. Walter took the photo and examined it carefully. His expression gradually changed, passing from confusion to recognition and finally to shock. "This picture was taken here at the ranch," he murmured. "This man is Raymond. And this baby is Jake." Martha completed. "Walter, Jake is Raymond's son, my grandson." The rancher raised his eyes from the photo, looking at Jake with a completely new expression. "Raymond's son? But how— Why didn't you tell me?" "Because Raymond asked for secrecy when he left," explained Martha, her voice loaded with emotion. "He said it was to protect the boy, and I was afraid you would be angry with me for keeping this secret." Walter remained silent for long minutes, processing the information. He looked again at Jake, then at Lightning, then back at the photograph. "That's why he behaves this way with you," he finally said, referring to the horse. "He remembers you." "I remember him too," said Jake. "Not everything, but some things. The smell of the ranch, my father's singing voice, Lightning, when he was small." "Your father used to sing you to sleep," said Walter softly, his voice carrying a surprising emotion. "I heard him sometimes when I passed by Raymond's cabin at night. It was a tune from the Kentucky hills." "Miss Martha told me about that," replied Jake, "and about why my father had to leave." Walter turned to Martha with a stern expression. "You told him about that trouble with the loans?" "I told him the truth, Walter. The boy had a right to know." "And he did," agreed Walter, surprising them both. "Raymond was a good man who made bad decisions, but for noble reasons. He wanted to grow, prosper, give his family a better life." He sighed deeply. "If I had realized in time what kind of people were approaching him, perhaps I could have helped." "You're not to blame," said Martha. "Raymond was too proud to ask for help." Walter knelt in front of Jake, getting to the boy's eye level. "Jake, do you want to stay here at the ranch? Really?" "Yes. Sir, this is my place. Even knowing your father isn't here, that we don't know when he'll return." Jake looked at Lightning, who had approached, and now gently rested his head on the boy's shoulder. "I'll wait for him, and I'll take care of Lightning until he comes back." "And if he doesn't come back?" "Then I'll take care of the ranch when I grow up," replied Jake with the determination that Walter had already learned to recognize. "This is my family." Walter smiled for the first time in a long time, a genuine smile that completely transformed his severe face. "Then it's decided. You stay, but you'll have to learn to work for real, not just play with horses." "I'll learn," promised Jake, his eyes shining with happiness. "And Martha," Walter turned to the housekeeper, "don't worry about keeping secrets anymore. We're a family now, a strange family, but a family." Martha couldn't contain her tears. "Thank you, Walter, thank you for understanding." I understand because I've lost people who were important to me, he said, looking toward the house where he had lived with Margaret. And I know that when we find family again, we have to hold on tight. That afternoon, for the first time since Raymond had left, Sunny Creek Ranch seemed complete again. Jake helped Walter fix a fence, Martha prepared a special dinner, and Lightning grazed freely in the larger pasture, without the limitations of the isolated corral. During dinner, Walter made a proposal that surprised everyone. Jake, how about, if tomorrow we start training you to ride other horses too? If you're going to work here, you need to know how to handle all the animals. Can I really? Of course. And who knows, when you grow up, you might even help me train horses for other ranches. With that gift you have, we could make Sunny Creek the best horse ranch in the region. Jake smiled but then became thoughtful. Mr. Thompson, do you think my father will be proud when he comes back and knows I took good care of Lightning? I'm sure he will, boy. I'm sure he will. That night, when Jake lay in his bed, he no longer felt like an orphan lost in the world. He was a boy who had found his true family and his true home, and for the first time since his parents' departure, he slept deeply, dreaming of horses running free through the fields of Sunny Creek Ranch. 3 months had passed since the secrets were revealed at Sunny Creek Ranch, and the transformation was visible in every corner of the property. Jake had become not just a family member, but a fundamental piece in the daily operation of the ranch. His special connection with animals had extended beyond Lightning, and now he helped Walter train other horses with surprising results. On this Saturday morning, Jake woke up with a different feeling in the air. He couldn't explain what it was, but there was something that made his heart beat faster. He quickly got dressed and went to the window, observing Lightning in the pasture. The horse also seemed restless, his ears alert, as if he were hearing something that others couldn't perceive. "Good morning, Grandma," greeted Jake as he came down to the kitchen where Martha was preparing breakfast. "Good morning, my little grandson," she replied, kissing his forehead. "Did you sleep well?" "Sort of. I had strange dreams again." Martha stopped stirring the eggs in the pan. "What kind of dreams?" "I dreamed that someone was coming, someone very important." Jake picked up a glass of milk. "And Lightning is acting. Weird today, too. He keeps looking at the road." "It must just be anxiety," said Martha, but her voice carried a poorly disguised note of hope. During breakfast, Walter noticed Jake's agitated behavior. "Today you're going to help me tame that bay horse that arrived last week," he said. "I need your magic with the animals." "Okay, Mr. Thompson. But can I take a look at Lightning first? He's acting very strange." "Sure, but be careful, even though he's tame, he's still a strong horse." Jake ran to the pasture where Lightning was grazing. The horse saw him approach and trotted over to him, but instead of his usual affectionate behavior, he remained alert, constantly looking in the direction of the ranch entrance. "What is it, friend? What are you feeling?" Lightning whinnied softly, a sound that Jake had learned to interpret as anxiety mixed with expectation. It was the same sound the horse made when a storm was approaching, but the sky was clear and blue. "Jake," John's voice, the foreman, echoed across the pasture. "Someone's coming." Jake's heart raced. He ran to the fence and saw a distant figure walking along the dirt road. It was a man carrying a backpack, but he was still too far away to be identified. "Grandma, Mr. Thompson, someone's coming," shouted Jake, running back to the house. Martha and Walter came out onto the porch, shading their eyes to see better. The figure continued approaching slowly, and with each step the tension in the air increased. "I can't see who it is," murmured Walter. "Could it be some traveler asking for shelter?" asked Martha, but her voice trembled slightly. It was then that something extraordinary happened. Lightning, who had remained in the pasture, suddenly raised his head and let out a loud, prolonged whinny. It wasn't a sound of alarm, but of recognition and pure joy. The horse began galloping toward the fence, his hooves beating on the ground in a rhythm that seemed like music. "He knows that person," murmured Jake, his eyes filling with tears without knowing exactly why. The figure on the road stopped upon hearing Lightning's whinny. Even at a distance it was possible to see that the man had also changed, his posture shifting from tired to alert. "My God," whispered Martha, bringing her hand to her chest. "My God in heaven, could it be—" The man began to run. His backpack fell to the ground, forgotten as he ran toward the ranch. Lightning had reached the fence and was whinnying incessantly, as if calling for someone. "It's him," said Martha, tears beginning to stream down her face. "It's my son, it's Raymond." Jake felt his legs grow weak. The man running toward the ranch was his father, his real father, who had left when he was only 2 years old and who was now coming home. "Dad?" murmured Jake, his voice barely audible. Raymond reached the fence where Lightning was waiting for him. The reunion between man and horse was moving to watch. Lightning rested his head on Raymond's chest, who embraced the animal's neck, both, remaining that way for long moments. "I missed you, my friend," Raymond was heard saying, his voice choked. "I missed you so much." Then he looked at the house and saw the 3 figures standing on the porch. His eyes scanned Walter, then Martha, and finally fixed on Jake. Even at a distance, father and son recognized each other instantly. "Jake?" said Raymond, his voice filled with emotion and disbelief. "Dad!" shouted Jake, running toward the man he had waited for so long. The meeting happened in the middle of the pasture, under the midday sun. Raymond knelt and opened his arms, receiving the son he had left as a baby and now found as a 5-year-old boy, full of life and courage. "My son," murmured Raymond, hugging Jake tightly. "My boy, how you've grown." "I knew you would." "Come back," said Jake, crying and laughing at the same time. "I took care of Lightning for you. I took good care of him." "I know you did." I felt in my heart that he was well cared for. Martha arrived running, followed by Walter. The family reunion was intense and emotional, with hugs, tears, and words of love that had been kept for years. "Why did you come back now?" asked Walter, after the first emotions had calmed down. "Because the problems were resolved," replied Raymond. "The people who threatened me were arrested for other issues. They no longer represent a danger to anyone." He looked at Jake. "And because I couldn't stay another day away from my son." "Are you staying?" asked Jake, still clinging to his father. "I'm staying forever," promised Raymond. "I'll never leave you again." That afternoon, Sunny Creek Ranch was complete for the first time in years. Raymond told of his adventures, explained how he had worked on distant ranches to save money, and how he had followed his son's growth from afar through letters that Martha secretly sent. "You've become everything I dreamed." "You would be," said Raymond to Jake as the two groomed Lightning together. "Brave, kind, and with a special gift for understanding animals." "I learned from Lightning," replied Jake. "He taught me to have patience and to listen to what the animals' hearts are saying." "Then he was a good teacher," smiled Raymond. That night, during the happiest dinner the ranch had seen in years, Walter made a proposal that surprised everyone. "Raymond, how about if the 3 of us became partners, you, me, and Jake, when he grows up? We can transform this ranch into the best horse breeder in the region." Raymond looked at his son, who was smiling from ear to ear, then at Walter. "It would be an honor, boss." "No longer boss," corrected Walter. "We're family now." That night, Jake slept for the first time in years, with the absolute certainty that he was exactly where he should be, surrounded by all the people he loved, and with the promise of a future full of possibilities. 6 months after Raymond's return, Sunny Creek Ranch had completely transformed. What was once a property marked by loneliness and longing now breathed life, work, and mainly family love. Jake, now with his 6th birthday just celebrated, had become a small legend in the region. Ranchers from neighboring towns came to Sunny Creek to see the boy who tamed wild horses with just kind words and infinite patience. But for Jake, none of this mattered as much as having his father back and being able to work alongside him every day. On this Sunday morning, traditionally, a day of rest, the family gathered on the porch for the special breakfast that Martha prepared on weekends. Raymond watched Jake play with a foal that had been born 2 weeks ago, the offspring of a mare they had recently purchased. "Dad, he already knows me," said Jake, caressing the small foal. "Yesterday he came to me without me calling him." "It's the family gift," smiled Raymond. Your great-grandmother, my mother's mother, also had this connection with animals. She said it was because she respected their hearts. Will you teach me everything you know about horses? I'll teach you everything I know, but you already know things that I'm still learning, replied Raymond, proud. You have a special way. That's all your own. Walter approached, carrying some papers he had brought from town on Friday. Raymond, the responses to the letters we sent to other ranches have arrived. 3 already want to hire our services to tame difficult horses. Really? Asked Raymond, excited. Which ones? Colonel Wilson's ranch in Glenwood, Pine Ridge Ranch in Oakville, and one in Cedar Falls that has a horse no one has been able to ride for 2 years. Dad, can I go with you? Asked Jake, his eyes shining with expectation. Not yet, son. You need to grow a bit more, but I promise that in about 2 years, you'll come with me to visit other ranches. Martha approached with a tray of freshly baked cornbread. It's good to hear you planning for the future, she said, smiling. It's been so long since this house had conversations about plans and dreams. Grandma, do you think we'll manage to make the ranch the best in the region? Asked Jake. I'm certain, my little grandson. With your gift, your father's knowledge, and Mr. Thompson's experience, you'll do extraordinary things. Walter sat in the rocking chair that had been his late wife's. You know, Margaret would be very happy to see how this house has returned to having joy, he said, with a melancholic but genuine smile. She always said that family isn't just who is born together, but who chooses to stay together. She was right, agreed Raymond, and I choose to stay here with you forever. The conversation was interrupted by a familiar sound, lightning whinnying from the pasture. But it wasn't a whinny of calling or alert. It was the sound he made when he was simply happy and content. Even lightning is singing with joy, observed Jake, running to the railing to see the horse. Indeed, Lightning grazed peacefully in the larger pasture, occasionally raising his head to observe the family gathered on the porch. There was no more restlessness in his movements, nor loneliness in his eyes. He had found his peace. Dad, said Jake, returning to Raymond's side, do you regret having left? Raymond became serious for a moment, considering the question. I regret having taken so long to return, he finally answered, but I don't regret having gone. Sometimes we need to distance ourselves to protect those we love, and sometimes we need to face our fears to be able to return home. And now you're not afraid anymore? Now I have courage, corrected Raymond, courage that you gave me by taking such good care of Lightning and by becoming the brave boy you are today. Walter stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, observing the fields that extended as far as the eye could see. You know, when Margaret passed, I thought this ranch had lost its soul, but you've proven to me that sometimes the soul just changes form. What do you mean? Asked Jake, curious. The soul of this ranch has always been love. Before it was the love between me and Margaret. Then it was lost for a time. But now it's the love between all of us, a family that chose and found each other. Martha approached and placed her hand on Walter's shoulder, and it will continue to be, because real family is like that. It grows, it transforms, but it never disappears. That afternoon, as the sun set over the fields of Sunny Creek Ranch, 4 generations were represented on that porch. Walter, with his wisdom and experience. Martha, with her maternal love that embraced everyone. Raymond, with his strength and determination. And Jake, with his special gift and pure heart, representing the future full of possibilities. In the pasture, Lightning grazed peacefully, occasionally raising his head to observe the family that had formed around him. He too knew that he had found his place in the world. Dad, said Jake, snuggling next to Raymond in the rocking chair, do you think someday I'll be as good with horses as you are? Son, replied Raymond, embracing the boy, you're already better than I ever was, and you'll be even better. And we'll work together forever. Forever, promised Raymond, kissing his son's forehead. As the stars began to appear in the skies of Colorado, Sunny Creek Ranch rested in peace. It was a complete ranch again, where horses ran free, family was reunited, and the future shone like the stars that illuminated that perfect night. And so the boy who had arrived as an orphan found not just a family, but his destiny. The wild horse found its peace. The lonely man found companionship. The dedicated woman saw her family reunited. And they all discovered that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as challenges, and that true love always finds a way to overcome any distance. At Sunny Creek Ranch, where wild horses learn to trust and lonely hearts learn to love, a new story had begun. A story of family, of belonging, and of dreams that come true when we have